welcome everybody to Pseudo Short Episode 1. I'm the podcast host for this week, Josh Kiser, and joining me today, Kyle Hoagland.
Hey, what's going on, everybody?
If you guys listened to our last podcast or the previous podcast, you know that we've kind of changed the format where every 2 weeks we're going to, well, I should say twice a month, we're going to give you guys a full 90-minute podcast, which will sort of be our main show. But then we want to keep content out there for you guys, and we're going to do that in what we call these little mini podcasts or pseudo shorts. And this will be our first one.
His words, not mine.
Absolutely, they're my words. Patent pending, trademark pending, all that fun stuff. And they're going to be kind of topics that maybe you can't get 90 minutes out of, or we just don't have the time, or maybe it's something that we kind of are a little passionate about, but it might not be something that all of our listeners want to listen to for 90 minutes. And, they could be 15 minutes, might be a half hour, somewhere in that range, that's why we're calling it a short podcast. And this week, we're going to, we'll just jump right into it, and we're going to discuss the Nintendo Switch, which kind of is in the news right now because Nintendo just had a big presentation for it. And Kyle, I know this is sort of a topic that is near and dear to your heart, so I'll let you kind of lead things off here.
Well, the Nintendo has always been a staple in the Hoagland household in some way, shape, or form. I have, other than I think the Virtual Game Boy or the Virtual Boy, I have owned practically every home console. God damn it!
Man, you did console. It, not me.
I know I did it this time. Oh goodness. Anyways, I said from the classic Nintendo Entertainment System all the way up to the Wii U. I've owned every single one of them. I've even had a Nintendo DS. I don't own a 3DS, but definitely I bought the DSi when it came out. I think like 2010 or something like that. So yeah, this is definitely a near and dear to my heart topic. I definitely would consider myself a Nintendo fanboy. If
you were a true Nintendo fanboy, though, you would have had Virtual Boy. I'm a little disappointed.
No, well, a neighbor of mine had the Virtual Boy, and I did play it. It wasn't very enjoyable because it just made you feel like throwing up the whole time. It was like their attempt at like really, really bad early 90s, almost virtual reality, and it was very vomit-inducing, I'll say it that much, or seizure. That was not good for people with epilepsy.
Are you epileptic?
I am not, but
okay.
I'm also a fan of actually good consoles, and unfortunately, that was not a very good one.
Fair enough. Speaking of good consoles, the Wii U, just real quick, I guess I should say, as for me, I've been a fan of Nintendo. Obviously, I grew up with the Nintendo Entertainment System. That was my first real video game system. And then after that, I kind of jumped over to the Sega Genesis, and then I was a Sony guy, only owning the Nintendo Wii after that as far as the major consoles. And then, I've had a couple of the Game Boys, and I think I had SP at one point as far as the handhelds go. But what we really want to jump into is discuss the Nintendo Switch. And, for some people, you might think like, wow, Nintendo's already coming out with another system. It seems like just yesterday the Wii U was released, and you wouldn't be far off. I think we're just over 4 years since the launch of the Wii U. And
I know I bought mine in January of 2013, and it hadn't been out for that long.
Yeah, I think November of 2012 was the release for that. And it was, you, Kyle, are one of last, according to Wikipedia's most recent update, you're about one of 10 million people to currently own, or 13 million people, I should say, to currently own it. That is 19th all time for a video game system. In other words, not very good. For comparison's sake, the PS4 has sold 53 million at this point, so almost 3 times, 4 times the amount of systems. So I think they saw some failure there in the Wii U and just wanted to kind of switch things up, right?
Get it? Oh god, that presentation had so many puns.
Well, when you have the
thing.
word switch, it's going to be bound to happen. Just like this podcast, I'm going to be using that a lot.
But it was
Literally.
just repeated the entire time. It was like, no, let's switch to this. Like, I would have liked it more if they were able to, and put the word switch in different ways to at least make it somewhat fresh. But whatever.
So before we get into the Switch, I guess real quick, would you agree with me that the Wii U was sort of a failure?
For me, it wasn't. Once again, I feel like that's if you're asking me if I was an executive trying to sell the damn thing, of course it was a huge failure. But I can't say the one thing I'll always give Nintendo credit for is that they always seem to be the innovator, but they never seem to be. That never seems to be what now is what's going to sell product. One thing about the presentation, I know we're going to talk about it, but it kind of reminded me is that pretty much everything that they did with their major home consoles is that they were the first to do a lot of things that are now would be considered standard procedure, such as rumble controllers, analog sticks, just like little things like that. Like as far as the controller is concerned, they were the first ones to really push the whole take your console and take it and move it somewhere. Putting games on a small screen and making it portable. That's all them. That was adopted later by other companies. But I think it just seems like the landscape of the gamer has changed. Probably, I think right when the PS2 came out, I think that's when it really started to shift to having a dedicated gaming system at your home. It stays there. It's it's going to be a gaming medium. That's basically all it's there for. So it's going to have all the compartments for it. It's going to be a big juggernaut of a system. And I think that the Nintendo has always been the system or the company that said, look, there's already two companies that are already in our ecosystem for that. Why should there be a third? There's no reason to make another third powerful console when all they really need to do is try to be innovative and still come out with their first person their IPs, like Zelda and Metroid, Mario, all that kind of stuff. But making another just standard console that has the same specs as everything else, has the same, it doesn't make any sense. What they're selling is if you have a PlayStation or Xbox, that's fine. Our whole point is that if you wanted to have a second console, if you had a PlayStation, you would rather get a Wii than get the Xbox. That was I think that's what they were fighting for. They did a very good job with it with the Wii. I think a lot of their stuff seems to be either it's cool stuff that nobody wants or it's just stuff that becomes unappreciated.
Well, I think from a business model, that's not a good way to run your business, right? Like you don't want to be like, well, we have two competitors. After you buy one of those competitors, we want to be second. Like I feel like that shouldn't be the way they should run a business. It should
I think that maybe I should rephrase that. They don't want to compete directly with Xbox or PlayStation. That's because that type of gaming genre, that type of gaming community has already been established. So if you're going to try and take some grab stock in this gaming world, you do have to do stuff a little bit differently. You've got to provide something that's different, and just having a PlayStation 4 type of console that's just going to play Mario and Zelda and Metroid and stuff like that, I don't think that's going to be enough. I don't think that's what makes it worth it, because now you're splitting that exact stock with three companies. So I think their whole point of it is trying to be different. That way, like if you want to sit down and use a standard game controller playing, Assassin's Creed or things like that, then you got your console for that. If you want to do something that more with friends and have the motion controls and play Mario while taking a shit, then you got another choice. And I think that's what their goal was, and unfortunately, just like I feel like it just never stuck since the Wii U. Really, I mean, the Wii was a great seller, honestly.
Oh yeah, no, the Wii was way up there. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but the Wii was it was a very successful one. But okay, let's just jump into what the Switch is. They had their presentation, and I don't know how much you want to talk. If you want to talk much about the presentation, or if you just want to talk about the Switch itself. But the big thing, I guess, let's break down what the Switch is, and it is probably the first of its kind in this format that lets you. It is a console system that you can almost snap it into place, and you play it on your television. And then you're like, hey, you know what? I got to go on the road, or I want to take it somewhere else, you just pull it out. You got a screen right there, and you can keep playing your game. And it's basically a way to swap in and out at home, on the road, on a bus, in a car, on a plane, wherever you want to be.
In a boxer with a fox.
There you go. And that's the basic end of it. And I guess before we get any further from that, how do you feel about that aspect of it?
Well, and it hits home the feelings I had before, was that it's the innovation. And you said it's the first of its kind. That has always been consistently Nintendo's goal, is that all right, consider whatever a failure. But in the end,
I will.
almost everything that they have tried to do or create has always been a stepping stone for something to be adopted later. I always, like I said, I think I've done it before, where I've compared like Android to Apple, where Android will come out with the innovative first ever type of features that might have been niched and some people cared about and some didn't, and then Apple decided to make it important by putting it on their products. But somebody always had to try it first,
sure,
to see how it would work and kind of get it creates the conversation. And then I guarantee you, because of this release, I can definitely see Sony in this case, and Microsoft, looking at that and just seeing, like, is that something that our community would like to have as a feature or as a standalone product? I mean, it opens up innovation, which I think is always a good thing. I don't think it's ever frowned upon, that even if it's not the most popular thing, I think it's always great that that companies are trying in this way.
Sure. So let's talk about the sort of the hardware end of it. So, the Switch itself, for the people who haven't seen it yet, and there's all kinds of videos online now, you basically have a little screen, 6.2 inches, which doesn't sound like much because it's not that big. I think it's the same size as the Wii U screen.
It sounds about right.
But it's smaller than an iPad mini. They're almost kind of talking about it as a tablet, but it's not going to be like a tablet. Like, you can do a ton of other stuff on it. In fact, like right now they're saying no Netflix, none of this other stuff. Now, maybe that stuff's going to come down the line, but it's not there currently. So you get the small little, almost like a Kindle e-reader sort of vibe, little iPad mini size screen, and you got two Joy controllers, I think they're called, that kind of snap on the sides that'll basically let you, be your controller for it. So then, when you play handheld like that. But then that said, you can take those controllers off, prop the little screen up on a table, and now you've got two controllers, and you and your buddy can play. Or so there's all kinds of different variations and combinations that you can do. You can take that and then swap it into, it's I don't know, what are they calling, the docking station? You can dock it in there.
The grip. I think if you're talking about the ones that combine together to make one kind of almost like a Pro controller, that's the grip.
Well, right, and then you snap the controllers
grip
in there. So there's different combinations of how you're going to do this. And from what I've read, it seems like controller-wise and things like that, they look very tiny. But people are saying it hasn't really been an issue, with the exception of when you're playing with just the Joy controller turned sideways and you and your buddy each have one end of it and you're playing. They said it's a little tiny then. But outside of that, they said everything else feels okay. They do have a normal, quote-unquote, gaming controller, which I think is the Pro. And that seems to be the one that if you are a typical gamer, that would be the one you're going to be playing with more often than not. If
you feel like dropping $70.
Well, to be fair, let's talk cost here for a minute. The system itself is going to be $299 at launch, which is one of the cheapest launch costs you've had in a system in a long time. So I'll give them credit there. I think they're trying to hit a price point that they think will intrigue buyers, and I think that's a great price there. Now, that said, I think some of the games that they're coming out with cost do not match what they should.
Well, I think the games they've already said are going to be $69.99 or something like that for a game, especially if it's, I think for like Zelda or something like that. I think they've said $69.99. I think most people have accepted $49, like $50, maybe $60, depending on what the content is. If it comes with anything, or if it's like a 2-disc game or something like that. But from what I've for what I've read so far, these games can range for like a normal game. Like I would say, like during the holiday season, like Mario Odyssey or something like that, you're looking at, you could possibly be spending $69.99 on that game.
And I mean, that's a lot for a game. I think $60 I can, swallow for some games, but then like the one game, which is their 1-2 switch, which kind of seems to be what I consider the Wii Sports for this system. It's little mini games and things like that sort of show you the hardware and the design of the Switch.
Like for Wii U, they had Nintendo Land, which was like, once again, same idea.
And I think it's going to be $50 or $60, and it doesn't look like it should be $50 or $60. And on top of that, I think it actually should be packaged in with the system, because I think it's a game that people would play if they had it, but they're not going to go out and spend that kind of money for it, with the exception of just not having many games at launch.
I think it'd be nice if it was $2.99 and it came with a launch title of some sort.
Well, I think that's what the 1-2 Switch. I think that should be the launch title to come with it, because I think that would show you, what a little bit of everything the game has to offer, or the system has to offer, without being a crazy title. Because I don't think it's going to be something that people are going to run out and buy. Like, I need to have the 1-2 Switch so I can milk a cow. But if they had it, like, oh, this would be a fun little parlor trick kind of game to show my friends when they come over to check out my new system.
I'm trying to figure out if when I bought the Wii U, that if you could have just bought the Wii U like standalone. When I bought mine, I bought the Wii U Deluxe, which was $349. The Wii U, the classic basic one, the white one, was also $299. So it was good, once again, good price point. However, mine was bundled with Nintendo Land, and I don't remember whether or not that was normal, or if there was like if I actually maybe spent $400, like spent $349 for the system, but the bundle might have been $399 because with the game included into it. I couldn't tell you. But I do agree that I think what would really entice people is that the $299 price would also come with 1-2 Switch. But so far, I don't think it does. I think that's just because everything read is just the game, it's just the system.
Just system, correct. And we're actually going to have a guest on here in a few minutes, who's kind of an expert on one of our, a friend of ours. He's a big gaming enthusiast, and he can help kind of shed some light on things, as well as give an outsider's from you and I's opinion on what he's seen so far. But just before we do that, I want to briefly mention, I think probably the highlight of this presentation was the display of a couple of their games to sort of showcase the system, and more importantly, Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is going to be day one game. And I almost think that this is how they're going to, hope to sell a lot of pre-orders, is with this game. Like if Zelda's not there day one, I think this is, in a real bad state. I think having that there is going to really boost sales, and I think it'll. I think it's gonna. The game looks beautiful. The game looks great, and I think it's gonna definitely help the system get, kicked off. Get started, I guess.
And I think the Wii U, when it came out, maybe Mario Brothers U was maybe, I don't even know if it was even a launch title. That might have been a couple weeks later, or a month later that it was released. I think Nintendo Land was definitely the launch title. So yeah, I think that was one of the big problems with the Wii U, was it like right out of the gate, you had Nintendo Land, and it was just like no one cared about that. It's nice that this console is coming out with one of the most beloved series in gaming history, and it also helps that there hasn't been a Zelda game in 7 years.
Has it been that long?
Skyward Sword. I mean, think of it. I mean, remember when I played it at your place with Haddix when you guys lived together? That was a brand new game. So it had to been at least. I mean, I thought we looked it up. I thought it was like 2010 that Skyward Sword came out. So we're talking 7 years. It came out
2011. Yeah, wow. You're right, yeah. So A solid
going on 7 years.
Yeah,
we're going on 6 years.
Going on 6 years. So it's been 5 years for a Zelda game, which is a pretty long time. But yeah, so I mean, it's and it helps that this one, I'm sure we could save it for another podcast, but it looks like it could be the best Zelda. Just if you just visually and stuff, they're going to have voice acting in it for the first time. So there's a lot of hype behind the Zelda game, and could really help get this, started off.
There's a small fanboy in me that doesn't want that though. Like I don't know why, but like you've never had it. Zelda games have always been popular with the fact that every time they talk, they always made like a and like that kind of crap. And then like, Link's just like, the whole damn game.
Right.
And at this point, it almost is iconic that it does that. So the fact that we're actually going to hear words come out of people's mouths, it's cool that they're actually taking that kind of time to do it. But at the same time, I feel like there's a small bit of nostalgia that's going to be lost with actually adding dialogue.
Right. Yeah, it'll be interesting. But we've kind of chatted enough. Let's bring on our special guest today. His name's Casey Cuomo. We know him, or at least I know him personally as VK. That was his World of Warcraft name. That's how I met him some years ago, playing WoW with him. Kyle, you've kept closer in touch with him. But VK, if you're there, go ahead and say hello, and we can get this started as a little Q&A session here to kind of get your inputs and thoughts on the Nintendo Switch and the presentation launch.
Sounds good, guys. How's it going? Thanks for having me. As he said, my name's Casey. Otherwise, just call me VK. It's really the easiest way to go about things. And
it'll be tough not to do that. It'll be tough not to call you. It'll be tough to call you Casey, but yeah, I appreciate it.
I do want to just say I did own a Virtual Boy. I had that thing, and I will say that the worst part about that. Bless my mother. She bought it as it was already discontinued, which is the way I got most of my systems.
Perfect, yeah.
So, games were nice and cheap. But to her defense, the thing wasn't terrible. Great Wario game, great Mario Tennis game. The only caveat was having to set that bad boy up on a table and get your face into it. I rigged something up where I put a Velcro strap on the back, and I would literally lay in bed with it attached to my head looking up. And that was the best way I found to do it.
I feel like your head had to be a certain configuration to use that system.
Maybe. I figure, being called an enthusiast, I figured I'd jump in here with a little bit of tidbit like that just to show how insane I am and how I even was, 15, 20 years ago when that thing was out. So.
Hold on, you're saying 15, 20 years ago virtual. I don't think you understand how old we are now. 20 years ago, that's 2000. That's 1997.
That's true. Yeah, that's true because we just celebrated Pokemon turning 20 this last February.
Exactly.
And that was the first time I was able to literally nostalgically say I felt old because I remember, I don't know if you guys remember, since we're talking about Nintendo anyway, remember those super cryptic commercials when it first came out where the bus driver was being terrorized by the Pokemon and you didn't quite know what it was? So that totally just made me look back to those days and laugh. And first time I've generally felt old.
So the first thing I just want to ask you about, because I think it's how I felt when I before I knew about this whole presentation. I think it was around the time when that first teaser, that first 3.5 minute video that they gave for the Switch, and how absolutely pumped I was, and then having a very kind of weird feeling after the end of the Switch presentation. So what was your excitement like, I would say, before you even watched the presentation, knowing it was going to be about the Switch, and then what was how did you feel after the event ended and you kind of digested everything?
I was very excited for the Switch coming out. I like to follow the gaming enthusiast websites. I'm big on NeoGAF, and so always kind of on the rumor mill and stuff like that. I was excited for it, especially the aspect of having a high-powered handheld console. I love gaming, but also for a lot of my favorite genres like RPGs and stuff like that, I have a lot easier time getting into them and digesting them on a handheld than say on my large TV.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And also, being a little bit of ADD, I like being able to multitask. So being able to have something else on in the background with consoles or with the handheld for those long games really works for me. So I was really looking forward to a really high-powered handheld. I'm a big fan of the Vita. I own a 3DS and I've owned a Vita since launch. My 3DS is mostly for exclusives and to play that sweet, sweet Monster Hunter. Like most people, I pray every day that the Monster Hunter series, grew up and turned into something bigger and better with, better graphics. And, hopefully, if they're going to continue just being on Nintendo things, I was really excited that this would spell, the beginning of a new generation of Monster Hunter games where they stopped using the low res engine and everything for it. So, Monster Hunter alone was totally building up my hype for the Switch.
So then what I guess, what's your hype now, I guess?
Well, I guess if you don't have hype anymore, it then becomes non-existent.
Did it meet your expectations?
Not at all.
I guess.
Not at all, unfortunately. I mean, and it's a whole collaboration of things. It was hardly just the Switch event. It was all the material that came out the day after as well. Finding about the prices of the controllers and finding out this $80 for the Joy-Cons and $79.99 for the Pro controller. And then, the revelation that when Nintendo was doing their Treehouse presentation, they were showing the gamepad controller that you affix the Joy-Cons to. They were showing the one that, charges the controllers. And then we actually learned that that's not the one that comes with the system. The one that comes with your initial $300 purchase is literally going to be just a plastic shell that doesn't charge it in any way. And the only way to charge your Joy-Cons at release without buying something extra is to have it in tablet handheld mode and have it plugged in. So, there's a couple things there. It really just kind of nixes the whole agenda of having a handheld, but also having as a home console. And it seems like they just, what they're really in it for. Well, not even to say that. I'm sorry. I would say that they still don't really quite know what they're in it for. What it's going to be. It seems like it's in a position where it doesn't really know what its identity is.
So with how much that you said it says not at all, is there one particular thing that really, really points out that really is that may deter you? I think I heard, like, as far as reading what you said on Facebook, it seems like you went from being like day one purchaser to not even sure if you're going to buy it at all now. What was if you can pick one single thing that changed your mind, like, almost a full 180, if you could just pick one thing, what would it be?
Definitely just the broadcasted lineup for the first year of it. I mean, you literally, aside from if we're going to get any kind of announcements at E3 and stuff like that, we're literally looking at Zelda at release, Mario Kart in April, Splatoon 2 during the summer, and then Super Mario Odyssey in the wintertime. If you're making a console that's not supposed to follow the same mistakes that they did with the Wii U, they're kind of already on the steamroll path for that.
Yeah, that's what I noticed too, because, for me, Nintendo, one thing they make fantastic games. You can't take it away. The Mario Karts, the Marios, the Zeldas, the Mario Parties, the Super Smash Brothers, those are the great titles. And then, unfortunately, there's not a lot in between. And that was, my biggest gripe with the Wii U is I just didn't think there was enough good titles out there. And right now, that's sort of the direction it looks. Now, I will say they've got more... From what I've read, it sounds like more third-party developers. It's a little bit easier to develop for this system than it was for the Wii U, so maybe you'll get some more. I know they're trying to advertise Skyrim and stuff on there, which is fine, I guess, but it's also 4 years too late.
Are you ready to pay another $59.99 for that guy?
Exactly. That's that's. I agree.
If you're interested in Skyrim, you've already bought it 6 years ago.
Right. It is telling as well that we don't even have a date on that either.
Right. Now there is some, the fact that you can play Skyrim portably, that's something. But again, you've played if you like Skyrim, you've already played it. You have a system or a computer or something that you prefer it on. Now, I think the biggest aspect for me is the fact that, the portability for it and being able to play any title now, on your television, and then you can take it with you. And, you go from a 1080p down to a 720, which is, fine. It's a very intriguing thing. Do you think it spells the end of... Nintendo doing a, 3DS or the next generation of it? Do you think this is they're consolidating down to one system now to focus on?
That's a great question. I've actually seen it spoken to a lot. I personally feel that we won't know until we see how the initial sales are with the Switch. My only thing on that is because for the most part, Nintendo's been living off of the Japanese handheld market. I mean, it's by far, it's the 3DS market in Japan. Every time they bring out a new design, every time they bring out a special edition with Monster Hunter or Zelda or Pokemon, like it's immediately another 50,000 sales for the week, if not more. So they have this ridiculous collector's market in Japan, and I feel like if the Switch doesn't take Japan by storm, then they're going to continue on with that 100 million sell base that they have with the 3DS. It's too many it's too many units out there in the wild for them not to, to not cater to or not, see to still. My other thing with this is that a lot of information from the inner workings of Nintendo has shown over the last few years that their handheld development teams and their console development teams are super duper divided. And for the most part, the people that are on the handheld teams have no idea how the architecture of the consoles end up working, and vice versa with the console teams. Like, they're very set in, their design teams between EAD1, EAD2, Sakurai's team with Smash, and then you got a couple Western developers with Retro and stuff like that. They're pretty spread thin when it comes to how they handle things. So for me, it's going to be interesting to see if we're going to get some lower res like 3DS type games, or if every team is literally just going to jump into full 3D worlds, be it at 720p or 1080p.
So I got one more question here, and Kiser, if you got anything else, go ahead. But I think the last thing I wanted to ask you about was because of the fact that Nintendo has been kind of the I wouldn't say a failure in innovation. They're a failure at selling their product. I think their innovation is fantastic. I just feel like it hits a niche market that a lot of people don't seem to care much about. That might just be it.
Is that they're very innovative, but they're innovative for who is the question.
They're innovative for a small market of people who actually really care about that. So what I was going to ask you is, with the Switch, does it seem like this is going to be maybe a make or break time for them as being an actual console developer and going up against the likes of Xbox and PlayStation? Because it seemed like, with that fact that they just completely abandoned the Wii U, as far as I'm concerned, or do you think that they'll still continue being innovative, or do you think that there is an end of the road where when you fail so many times, it's like, okay, you might as well just stick with software?
It's hard to say. I mean, with all due respect, with the passing of Satoru Iwata, he was really their idea man. I mean, he was their best developer. He was their best coder. He, out of every single personality that Nintendo wanted to throw at us, he was without a doubt the most genuine. And, he's, very much like the father of Nintendo now, because, you hear about the things that he did for like Pokemon Gold and Silver, and the things he did for Kirby, and just all the ways he started out, and just, how great of a man he was. The man literally did carry Nintendo on his shoulders when he took over the company. And I don't know, it's just going to be very interesting to see what kind of happens, because I feel like kind of Nintendo lost the magic with Iwata's passing. So it's going to be interesting to see the ideas that come now after his passing for so long, because with all due respect to Miyamoto, he hasn't done very much great. He hasn't made a great game in a while. Star Fox, even though it was made by Platinum, was a total disappointment. And it's just going to be really interesting to see. I always have to respect Nintendo for sticking to their laurels and being that place that wants to innovate. But with HD Rumble, which is kind of their selling point with the Joy-Cons, I don't want to play a game where I have to guess how many ice cubes there are in a cup, or how many marbles are being rolled around. Like,
I agree. It's one of those things. It's like, oh, that would be cool for 30 seconds, and then after that, like, you're over it.
I'd like to think that they were just showing that off to say that that's the capabilities. I don't think they're going to come out with Super Mario, ice in a cup. But that's one of the games for 1-2 Switch. That makes me sad.
Yeah, it really is.
You will shake around the HD controller, and you're going to have to guess how many ice cubes.
See, I saw the whole high noon draw, and I think I saw a ping pong thing. There were some things that seemed kind of fun, or at least things that were at the very best, or at the very least, I guess, close to something like a Wii Sports. But once again, the Wii Sports is just fun because that's more relatable. You're playing sports that everyone knows how to play, or at least has seen it, so it's fun to do it. Nintendo Land was fun for a while, and then, like I said, that kind of just died off. 1, 2, 3 Switch, I'm afraid. I feel like that just falls into that. I think Wii, honestly, as far as since the Wii has been out, and now the Wii U, I still feel like Wii Sports is the most played game of
totally.
either system.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Well, the thing I got to remind you too, though, is 1, 2 Switch really isn't anything new. We've had WarioWare games forever. And that's pretty much all this is. I mean, with most people, most fans wondering why the heck it's not even being called WarioWare Switch. Because at least that had some charm to it, If Wario is your main character, it's going to have a lot of character in it. So that was just this thing. So, and then, I don't even think we need to talk about ARMS.
Here's what I saw it, and it seemed like, once again, I cannot imagine me bringing that over to a party and being like, who wants to play ARMS? No hands are going to be raised on that game.
And just, seeing the way that they were throwing the punches and stuff, most of us have been there with the Kinect or the Wii or the Move. You're not throwing your arms at full speed. It's not going to recognize that. And even if you are, you're going to throw out your back or your shoulders within the first 5 minutes. So it's just really funny seeing them with these new with the new commercials and the advertisements and the presentations and stuff where they're really throwing all they are into it. But
true story. I had to call off work. I had to call off work one day because I was playing Mario Sonic Olympics at Kiser's place, and we played for so long without stopping that I woke up the next morning and I couldn't even lift my phone to call off work because my forearms were completely blown out.
Yeah, you could turn any game on the Wii to Wii Fit.
Oh, absolutely. But let's we're gonna kind of wrap things up for a Pseudo short. We've probably ran longer than we intended, but that's good. That's okay. We discussed a lot of good things. Casey, I got one more question to ask you, and Kyle, this one goes for you as well. And that's, with everything you've seen so far, will you be pre-ordering the Switch? Have you already pre-ordered the Switch? And if not, do you plan on buying it? And if so, when?
Well, unfortunately, I can't pre-order it. I didn't get there quick enough because they only allotted 2 million units worldwide. So, Nintendo doing Nintendo with their artificial supply.
Of course.
But at this point, it doesn't really bother me too much. I fully told myself I wasn't going to buy it at release unless, they made some sort of trade-in deal that good, or I had, say, 10, 15 PS4, Xbox, and Wii U games I know I'm not going to play anymore and can kind of subsidize the cost. But for how much I love my Wii U and my 3DS, they are just full of dust at this point. So I don't know if I'm going to make that jump. The only thing that's kind of would push me at this point is a Monster Hunter, new Monster Hunter on it, and seeing that more than likely most of my my JRPG ports from the PS4 and stuff are probably going to find their way onto Switch instead of the Vita, kind of like with Disgaea 5. First time for the console one that doesn't come out onto the PSP or the Vita some year and a half later. So that's kind of a bummer because I was really looking forward to play that, but it's not a title I will ever play on my actual TV. So, time will have to tell, but I'm not enthusiastically lining up day one to get mine, and I sure as heck wouldn't have camped out or, gone out of my way to get one in my life that quickly.
Sure.
I'm definitely. I don't think I was going to get it first day anyways, and I give credit once again. I don't know if it's really giving credit that they pre-ordered already 2 million copies. I think that was expected. I don't think that's a shock. But I think if they had a better lineup to start with, I would have considered it. I will probably ultimately buy it, but I think it will probably wouldn't be until I can safely say I can leisurely walk into a Best Buy, a Fry's Electronics, or a GameStop and just pick up a box, to be completely honest.
All right. Well, there you have it. Casey, thanks again for joining us today on the Pseudo short, our inaugural episode. We really appreciate it. We'll have to have you back in the future if we got any more exciting video game news to discuss.
Happy to be a part of it. Yeah. Look me up when the Scorpio gets announced.
All right. So that's our Pseudo short, which I'm going to use that term very loosely this week. But hopefully we gave you guys a little bit of information on the Nintendo Switch. And like I said, plenty of information out there on the internet, YouTube, all that, if you want to find out for yourself whether it's something you're going to invest in. But it sounds like we're all kind of holding off for the time being anyways on it, though there will be some purchases in the future. Anything else from you, Kyle?
No, I just appreciated Casey's input, and it's re-inviting. It almost invigorates me to be almost into video games as much as he is, because I used to be that guy, and then once you start becoming pedestrian with jobs and wives and responsibilities, it's still nice to know that there's a man that's actually older than both of us that still has that 12-year-old enthusiasm for things like this. So it was cool to hear again.
Absolutely. So thanks again for listening. We'll be back with the full 90-minute podcast next week. But until then, from the Great Lakes to the Golden Gate, I am Josh Kiser. He is Josh. He is not Josh Haddix because he's not here this week. Habit. There we go. He is Kyle Hoagland and our special guest, Casey Cuomo. We will see you guys next time.
PseudoNerdPod.com. Later.